first two Gothic games were old-school RPGs. People were afraid the remake might try to increase its accessibility, and thus remove the charm and water down the identity of the original. But instead, the opposite happened.
You're not here to start trouble, are you?
I sure am. I'm gonna burn down the whole camp.
Oh, we got ourselves a funny one. I hate the funny ones.
The Gothic Remake is an absolute love letter to the series. And in many ways, the game is even more hardcore than the original was, and it takes some serious balls to do that in today's landscape. Here's why the remake impressed me so much, and where it could have taken even more liberties to improve on the original. Because while it keeps the original's strengths, it also inherits some of its weaknesses. Some are the results of its interconnecting systems, but others would have been preventable. What exactly that means? I'm so glad you asked. The game's setting is one of the coolest ways to establish a world I've seen yet. It takes place inside a barrier, a magical zone that anyone can enter, but no one can leave. Originally intended to only keep the prisoners from leaving, something went wrong and it did not let any creature out, including the mages that created it. Now everyone new is some kind of convict, original thrown in there to mine ore for the king's army at war. But after taking over the entire area, the convicts dictate the ore trade. Or more specifically, the old camp does. One of the three main camps that civilization inside the barrier split into. The old camp is trying to keep the status quo alive. The new camp instead harvests their own ore to hopefully blow up the barrier and escape. And the distinguished gentlemen of the swamp camp simply smoke weed while hallucinating about some god. And no, I'm not making that up. And yes, that is actually a cool and fleshed out faction. And that will also be relevant to the story. And don't worry, there will be no spoilers in both my script or my gameplay for vital parts of the game. So, let's jump right in. But let's start with the presentation. The Mine Valley the game takes place in is not tiny, but definitely a smaller map for an RPG. It is one incredibly dense place, however, that rewards exploration around every corner, at least almost. The game took the original design and added so many more details and vegetation that simply wasn't possible back in 2001 when the original came out. Most places still have similar layouts, but some were more drastically changed than others, such as the swamp camp or the troll ravine, which was basically completely empty in the original. And I think this is a good time to show you the differences between the two games and how much they actually changed. So let's start with the old camp. I don't think I gotta tell you which one is which, right? And here you can see the differences between the new camp. And finally, here's the swamp camp, which actually changed the most drastically. I also put the music of each game as the background music here. Tell me, I'm curious, which one do you prefer, the original or the reimagination? And if you've enjoyed this video so far, why not give it a like or subscribe? The downside of the increased details is the visibility of items, however. While plants still stick out, trying to find smaller things like amulets or materials, especially in dark places like caves, is basically impossible. And you just gotta walk along every single wall, waiting for the game to highlight an object in front of you. There's also no other setting that gives items any kind of extra visibility, like subtle reflections or brighter lighting. But at least they did not slam gigantic markers on them, like some other games do. But the graphics are really good, especially considering the medium-sized budget of this game. Lush vegetation, pretty good lighting without obscuring your vision, and there's also a surprising amount of character models. Their facial expressions can look a bit robotic at times, but for the budget the game had, it still looks pretty impressive as a whole. But on the other side you have the performance. It's definitely a product of the Unreal Engine 5, including the traversal stutters, and I even had the occasional crash here and there. Not a deal breaker, but noticeable. Seriously, do not get into this game with a weak PC. But stutters aside, the actual frame rate is solid, just not amazing. The conversations are very faithful to the original.
Hey, I'm new here.
Good for you.
Is that the old camp over there?
No. King Robar's cat house. The old camp's right under this bridge.
Also at this point I should add that as a German I played the game in both English as well as German, and the dialogues can actually differ quite a bit between two versions. Maybe I might actually do a separate video about that, but what I just want to say is that the voice acting and writing in general are good, but I don't actually think that either quite manages to get on the level of quality that the original German voiceovers for the first game had. Especially the German scripts are almost identical with the original, with a word added or swapped around here and there.
Ah, du willst ja noch mal vorher schön einen durchziehen, was?
Naja, also, ja.
The English translation is much better this time around, especially when you compare it to the first game.
I was gonna say something about your scrawny arms, but then your ugly face distracted me.
In general, it was interesting to me to discover the differences between the two main languages. Please don't hit me, my Polish friends. But what I found really impressive is how well the lip sync actually works. Some character designs look a bit unimposing, however. Look at Karim over there. He used to look like an absolute badass.
Ich bin der beste Kämpfer, den dieses dreckige Lager je gesehen hat.
But now he just looks like some random malnourished Somali.
You wanna know why I'm really here? So I can smack the brains out of wise guys like you, which is exactly what I'm going to do to you.
But in general, I enjoyed the writing. The game will not try your patience with unnecessary exposition.
Aren't they lovely? I better get going.
Instead, people get to the point quickly. Sometimes the best kind of talk is using your fists. I mean, we are dealing with criminals of some kind here, right? Do not expect heartfelt conversation about each other's feelings. But the game still does offer moments here and there that offer some calmness and reflection, giving you the opportunity to shape your character's past a little. Because while your character is fixed and technically has his own opportunistic and sarcastic personality, you still have enough room to make him your own, instead of feeling like you're playing as someone other than yourself. The music is the next highlight. Taking all the original melodies and adding even more layers to them, while introducing more tracks and giving specific locations their own unique ambience. I'm really digging what Kai Rosenkrantz has managed to do here. But why not have a listen for yourself? And besides that, I'm using this game's music as background music for this video. But even for sound effects, they used or recreated many of the old familiar noises. It feels like coming home when you hear a scavenger's cry, for example. What I'm not a fan of, however, is how they changed some of the cutscenes. The intro and especially a specific plot twist that I do not want to spoil here in this review have a very theatrical and exaggerated style to them. Almost like a trashy Spanish soap opera. Did I mention that the developers of Alchemia are situated in Spain? Combat is a big part of Gothic, and it is quite unique, but different from the original, even though it borrows from its key aspects. You start without even knowing how to properly swing any kind of weapon. You need to learn basic one-handed in order for your character to stop trying to use both hands. You only have one swing, and you are incredibly slow. Enemies kill you in a hit or two. And this is where you are forced to learn all the patterns of enemies, the ways you can kite them without proper dodges, getting around them, finding an opener to attack, however slow you still are. It's a great start, but undoubtedly one that many people are going to find frustrating. You will die more than you did in From Software titles. Seriously. Makes you feel helpless and sometimes even too scared to make the correct move soon enough. But all that is part of the process. As soon as you get basic training, you will start to understand the next layer of combat, the combo system. Basically, you can hit from 4 different directions: left, right, down, and from above. Though that can also be a stab with a very long reach for some weapon types. And depending on your level, you can combine up to 3 swings, depending on the directions. The game also forces you to switch them up, as using the same input twice simply ends and messes up your combo, but in a believable way. This is also in line with the style of the original. Enemies are mostly well telegraphed, and hitboxes also do their job, usually. Each enemy type also has specific weaknesses, like their reach, turn speed, size, or reactivity to a certain direction, with hits from above being the most likely to stun enemies, while hits from below even throw some enemies on their asses. Abusing this with goblins created some of the most fun melee situations I've ever had in RPGs. Interestingly, melee combat becomes more and more samey the further you progress. As you take less damage the further you go, the more efficient it will simply be to just spam your combos as fast as possible, and gone are the days where you are forced to fight as tactically superior as possible. But I especially enjoyed the early and mid-game combat when it comes to melee. Magic is also back, and this time it's more accessible than ever. You get runes from the first chapter on by talking to the Mage Taurus in the old camp, instead of waiting for chapter 3 to happen like in the old games. A very welcome change. Spells range from fast projectiles to slower charged spells or summons. Manipulation, like fear or mind control, and even shapeshifting. That is not just good to kill stuff as a big monster, but also lets you access some hidden areas or find alternative routes. It's a very fun and versatile playstyle, and easily has the most variety of all combat options. It does mean you will never be as close in person as with melee, however. So to get a grip on enemy behaviors, I would recommend starting a melee playthrough first. There's also ranged combat, and it is basic. You have a bow or crossbow, you aim, you shoot, headshots do extra damage. You know what this is like, and I think the other playstyles are simply more fun and unique. Doesn't mean it's bad, it's just not as interesting. As you level up and become stronger, and receive better armors, the game starts to open up more and more, letting you defeat a bunch of new enemies you realistically weren't able to fight previously. And that also means access to new loot and quests to complete. This creates a dynamic that makes every one fight feel like a true victory with meaning. You worked hard for this and got kicked while on the ground before. Well, now you have finally accomplished one of your goals, and this feeling of satisfaction is one I've never seen captured better than in this series. However, this also means that the game does, with the exceptions of a few spikes in difficulty, get easier the further you progress through the story. But it does never become trivial, with the stronger enemies or groups still having a decent chance to kill you. There's one particular fight against an orc that took me around 15 minutes or so to complete, while I died to that fucker every 15 seconds or so on average. Especially brutal because that part does not warn you after a really long dungeon to reach it. So you better commit to winning and learning to dodge or parry all attacks properly. Though to be fair, I tried too hard to be aggressive at first, and I can be quite stubborn in changing my approach, so results may vary. Just be careful to not hit people you follow. It is way too easy to hit friendly NPCs in this game, and they will turn around and ruin your day. Overall, combat definitely still has its janky sides, but I was definitely able to look past that. I have yet to see a difficult game that does not do something bullshit at some point. Even Elden Ring does. But at least Gothic lets you hit F5 indefinitely to keep you from losing progress and thus wasting your time. Certainly not perfect, but I definitely had fun. Lots of fun. And really, they simply nailed how much you can do with newly acquired skills. The progression is great. Exploration is the other huge pillar of this game. The map is not huge by RPG standards, as I've said, but not tiny either. It is bigger than the original, however. And it manages to mostly strike a balance between experiencing new locations and rediscovering previously visited locations anew, where you might notice an additional cave or loot here and there as you traverse the roads again and again. There are also no quest markers anywhere, so you have to pay attention to conversations, or hope that all relevant information is inside your journal, and sometimes it's not. Seriously. That's quite an oversight. But it does make you familiar with the world and forces you to pay attention and memorize the geography of the land. The downside is that quests, especially later, tend to send you from one place to another, and especially if you're not careful with tackling multiple objectives in close-by areas, you will end up with quite a bit of backtracking in the middle of the game. It never gets too bad if you ask me, but the means of teleportation you unlock later could have gotten added a little sooner if you ask me. But still, you have the opportunity to find shortcuts or alternative paths to your destination, since the map was expanded in the remake. The fall damage is very reminiscent of the early Witcher 3 days, and I do not mean that in a good way. The various wildlife you find throughout the colony also have their reasonable habitats and behaviors, like scavengers appearing in groups that mostly eat carcasses, or individual lizards roaming across bodies of water. You can find wildlife hunting each other dynamically too, and if you are too strong, they might even get scared and run away. Same is true for NPCs. Everyone has a reasonable daily routine. People will smoke, carry things, sleep in their own beds, talk with each other, and so on and so forth. They mostly react to fights or use sneaking around. The responses can be a bit delayed sometimes. I also had a situation where attacking someone resulted in some kind of small civil war of sorts for whatever reason. It might be odd and unintended, but it makes the game even more charming. The sheer dynamic situations that can happen tell their own little stories. Sometimes those stories can be horseshit, however. Like when the guy you are trying to do a quest for happens to fall to his death or be successfully hunted by some kind of monster out in the wild. In general, the bugs can also be a bit distracting. Some of the issues that I had were not really broken quests, but rather movement inputs not working, not being able to interact with an object at first, that kind of stuff. It's definitely a bit unpolished, but not broken. Movement is another aspect. When the game makes your hero deliberately slow, which is good, it can get annoying with how long some animations feel, like climbing. But the worst is the automatic jumps onto objects that are tiny but a bit higher than the ground you've been walking on. It forces you into small animations each time, and thus slowing you down to a crawl, especially when running across coarse rocks. In combat, that might kill you. Finding hidden areas or enemies to loot is satisfying most of the time. Because both ore, which is this game's currency, as well as experience are very hard to come by at first, so you absolutely will take what you can get. You can also learn how to climb walls now to reach even more hidden areas. With how much XP you can get from slaying monsters, combat always remains purposeful, even through later chapters. This is reinforced by the hand-placed enemies that do not automatically respawn, so you can't just farm certain areas to cheese the system. Progressing through the chapters does add newer and stronger enemies, but in a controlled fashion. You can also accept quests that have you follow an NPC, especially early on. Not only do they show you the world with some explanation, but they also help you kill monsters that are too strong for you. Or just die in the process. I mean, this game can be a bit unpredictable at times. This also means you gain most money from selling your stuff. The economy in general is much harder this time around. Traders have pretty limited ore most of the time, and not everyone will pay the same price for your junk, depending on the faction and how much the NPC already has of that stuff. While it is immersive, it comes with the unfortunate side effects of running to lots of traders to get decent prices, while cluttering your inventory even more, since you cannot get rid of your found weapons fast enough, then you will find new ones. Another good way to acquire things is lockpicking. It's a more complex system of different pins affecting each other when you move one, to eventually find the correct position for each one. It's a fun puzzle, but the hardest locks can be quite time-consuming, needing dozens of steps, even when solving them perfectly. But in general, I'm a fan of the system. I just wish there weren't so many difficult chests with disproportionately poor loot. But here and there you will find essential items as well, and that still does feel rewarding. Also be prepared to eat like a madman in this game, because while sleep will heal you, if it did not bug out on you, which happened too many times to me, you will get hurt a lot, especially early on. I must have consumed the equivalent of an entire cow farm worth of meat throughout the roughly 4 weeks that my character spent inside the barrier canonically. And while food items are plentiful, not just from your hunts but also from traders, eating will take a long time. I understand developers not wanting to recreate the Skyrim method of pausing the game while eating 500 wheels of cheese in your inventory, but having to eat like 20 pieces of meat while watching the entire animation of chewing for every single piece, even outside of combat, does get tedious after a while. You could also always drink potions. I even had dozens of unused ones in my inventory at the end, but it does shall strike me if I start being wasteful with my precious limited resources. No way in hell I'm gonna guzzle down a precious mana potion when I can just get baked instead, right? In general, the game could have needed some more quality of life features, like the inventory not featuring any way to sort items, and its infinite size makes any attempt at organization impossible the further you go. Or having to put your teleport runes into your hotbar and thus wasting a precious space because you only ever get 10 slots. And that especially sucks as a mage because you need your spells. But in general, this game absolutely oozes atmosphere. Seriously. The entire world, the atmosphere, how dirty every single thing is, how lonely it can be, and also the conflicts of the three factions are so well portrayed that it really just sucks you in. And that is a feeling that only very, very few games can replicate. I guess this is what you would call immersion. At one point, a few hours in, I was even robbed of all of my ore that I had acquired up to that point, but instead of just reloading, I kept going, because it's honestly more interesting to have the game tell some dynamic story instead of just optimizing everything completely. And I still felt like that in the early hours. I really didn't get much done. And I still felt like that in the early hours I really didn't get much done, but honestly, that made the experience even more unique. The game has you explore and understand the three main camps and ultimately join one of them. Then the true plot gets revealed more and more. This means the start is much more grounded. Starting as a freshie with nothing to your name, you're building a reputation for yourself by trying to impress as many people as you can. Later, more of the fantasy elements slowly start to shine through as you interact with magic and also the orcs. Story-wise, the game has many additions over the original, and I like most of the changes. The start of the game gives you seemingly more basic quests, but that does not mean they aren't well designed. Many things can be tackled in a way that you can do the job either perfectly and earn extra points with the NPC, helping you to join their camp. Or you can bag the items that they want for yourself, or even give them to other camps instead. The more you progress, the more epic the quests are going to become. But it also becomes increasingly linear, and that's one of the weaknesses the game inherited from the original. Because while there are often additional objectives and even the additional side quests here and there, it simply does not go far enough. Many events even feature no conversations to be had about them, even with major characters or your friends. That seems like a major oversight, especially in a game that is this tight, that does not even have a ton of different characters that you are talking to for the main events. Maybe it's also a bug, but they just kept silent for me. It also meant that progression through the later chapters felt much less impactful than it could have been. There are also some other NPCs and locations whose changes could have been further explored and fleshed out via quests, especially involving the swamp camp and the changes it goes through, or the main characters. At least the finale was really well done, but in the end, I feel like this remake kept just one thing the most from the original. Its lack of time in fleshing out the last third of the game properly. This is still not something that ruined the game for me by any means, but my overall perception of the game as a whole is still very positive. But with a bit of a bad taste because of the wasted potential. The game is truly a letter of love to the original. They did not just recreate the entire story, with some additions here and there, they also recreated some of its weaknesses, and the somewhat rushed later chapters with a lack of side quests. But if you are looking for a challenging game that does not treat you like an idiot in need of constant assistance and tutorial pop-ups, and instead expects you to pay attention and take in the setting, you will feel right at home, and you will be absorbed into the incredibly good atmosphere and immersion. There's a reason Europe fell in love with this game back then, and there's a reason you might fall in love with it too, whether that is your second time or even the first time you hear about it. I know I had an absolute blast in the end, and I am still craving more as I am writing these words. Innos willing, the team will get the chance to immediately work on a Gothic 2 remake next, because the foundation is absolutely solid. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening to me ramble a bit about this game that I really started to adore the more I played it. And I really hope you had a great time with the video as well. And if you'd like to hear more about the shit that I have to say about games, because there will definitely be more, why not comment, give this video a like, subscribe, and maybe even hit this ugly bell icon thing. I've heard that it would help sometimes. And until then, eat your greens. And I'm out.